webinar on the topic compliance of PV systems. So why did we come up with that special webinar? Recently, we posted on Facebook a little post about COCs for PV systems that attracted actually a lot of attention. And there were interesting discussions, pros and cons, and then we thought it would be nice to discuss that in a real or more real environment. And therefore, we planned that webinar. And we hope that you are all not only prepared to listen, but also to raise your questions. And I will be your host today, or your moderator, Antje. Tsakani will assist me. She is handling your questions and requests in the back. And then we have our experts, Robert Fourie and Lyndsay, both electricians, both PV trainers. And we have you, as I said. So we really want you. So we prepared some questions based on the Facebook discussions, and but we also want you to encourage you to raise your questions whenever they come up, and then I also will bring them to the discussion. So so you have to use the chat function to give us your questions, and Tsakani will make sure that we will not. Tsakani and I will make sure that we do not miss a question. And so, yeah, maybe we would start with a short introduction of Robert and Lyndsay by themselves. And we also prepared, because you do not have a mic, so that we also understand who you are and what is your background, we prepared a little poll, and Tsakani will pop up the poll. It will pop up right now on your screen, and we have some questions about your background, and also a question on what you think, how compliant your PV installations are, or not so what you think. On a scale of 1 to 10, how compliant are your solar installations? So thanks for participating in the poll, and then I would give the word to Lyndsay to shortly present himself.
Hi. Right, thanks, Antje. I'm an installation electrician. I have my own installation company, and I also do training for Green Academy for various courses. And this course that has generated this interest is one of the new courses, Compliance of PV Systems. And as Green Academy, we then put together a course, a full-day course, but it's going to definitely expand, and we could possibly see it even growing into 2 days or even more. But for now, that is the size of the course, and there's a lot of interesting information, and this Facebook post has obviously now generated some more interest, so that's great.
Thanks. Robert?
Hi, Antje, thanks. Yeah, I'm Robert Fourie. I'm an MIE, and I'm mostly involved in compliance. Compliance in hazardous locations, because I'm an MIE, but definitely also normal electrical installations and PV installations, because of my interest that I have in the PV field, and also because I'm a trainer in the PV industry. That's a great interest of mine, is compliance on the PV side.
Yeah, I definitely can confirm that both of you, that compliance is a very important topic for you. However, it seems like there's still a lack of clarity on the regulatory framework. I mean, this is what we saw on the Facebook post, and it looks like many of the people are of the opinion that there is no regulations, or there are no regulations. So, Lyndsay, maybe are there any standards and regulations for PV systems in the South African markets?
Yes, Antje, there are. SANS 10142-1 covers electrical installations in South Africa, and we've also got other standards like SANS 60364-7-712, So yes, we do have standards. It's how we interpret those standards and how we then apply that information into PV systems. I think the big confusion or question that we've had, myself included, is how do we compile this test report? How do we actually write a CFC for a PV installation? And that's led us in this direction. So certainly there are standards.
So do you have to add anything on that, Robert?
Yes, the law is that the standards are incorporated in the law and the regulation, and the regulation that we go with is our EIR 2009. Our EIR 2009 regulation is an accepted regulation by the Department of Labour, and it refers to SANS 10142. So SANS 10142 is the first regulation that we look at, or the first standard that we look at when doing electrical installations. Of course, then we also have our regulation, as Lyndsay said, 60364. That's very particular to the PV industry. So yes, the standards are definitely there, and we should follow those standards to the point.
Antje, then I can add for that. You asked me what all the standards are. So we've got our main list, which is 10142-1, and the latest edition is 3.2. Then we've got 60364-7-712. That is actually an IEC standard that was adopted by SANS in 2018. That's edition number 2. Then we've got SANS, well, we've got the OSH Act, as Robert mentioned, 85 of 1993. That is also then under the Electrical Regulation Act and the Electrical Installation Regulations. And then we've got other guidelines. They're not standards, but NRS 097-2-1 and -2-3. So those are, let's say, the 5 standards or parts of the standards we can refer to. Then we've also got SANS 10400 Part T. Now that's the building regulations. Now why I mention that? Because Part T is the fire regulations, and there's been a lot of discussion on the internet, on Facebook and that, about batteries, the safety of batteries, and where a battery may or may not be put into a PV installation, or any installation for that matter. So that's also quite an interesting topic, and that's why we've also had a look at SANS 10400 Part T. And then we've got some definitions that we'd like to look at, and one of them is actually SANAS, the South African National Accreditation System, and they also deal with the definitions of an installation, because we need to understand what an installation is, so that when we do a CFC or when we apply the standards, we apply it to our understanding of what an electrical installation is. So I would say those are our guidelines.
This is a lot. So maybe we come to that point. So how to interpret it, all the standards. So, but I mean, based on all the regulations, and also what was an interesting, or like what always comes up in all the discussions again and again is who is allowed to install PV systems. So, and how is that regulated? So could you enlighten us a bit more on that?
Robert, maybe you could start
Yes,
with this.
yeah, definitely. Thanks, Lyndsay, Antje. Yeah, so definitely the EIR 2009 is very clear about that. In order to do electrical installations, you need to be registered as an electrical contractor. So that's the first thing. Only registered electrical contractors may install may do electrical installation work. To be an electrical contractor, according to EIR 2009, you need to have a certified person. Certified person is an installation electrician or master installation electrician, or a single-phase electrician employed in his full-time capacity. So to register as an electrical contractor, you must employ somebody that can issue a certificate of compliance. To bring that back to PV installations, we say that, and I think we are supported by regulation, a PV installation can only be done by a competent person. Competent person meaning somebody that had training and competency and understands how PV systems work and how they should be assembled. With or for a registered electrical contractor under supervision of an IE or an MIE, installation electrician that can issue a COC. And I think that's very clear on the regulations on that. I don't know, Lyndsay, if you have anything that you want to add on that.
Yeah, I think, Robert, there's been a lot of discussion about a single-phase tester. And as it stands, a single-phase tester may not write a COC for a DC installation. Now, there was a lot of discussion because in the previous version of 10142, there was a normative reference and there was a table showing what an IE, a single-phase tester, and an MIE may certify. That table's actually been removed from the latest edition of SANS so that the clarity is absolutely there. The EIR installation regulations very clearly now states what a single-phase tester may do, an IE may do, and what an MIE may do. Also interesting, it's not quite about this, but just to put it into context, a single-phase tester may also only certify or do work on an electrical installation, a single-phase installation that is supplied only by a single-phase supply. So even if it's a three-phase supply, the single-phase tester may not then work on that installation, even though the installation is a... So that's an interesting point that we sometimes forget about. Maybe we could also just have a look at the Act then, because what is the hierarchy? Where does this come from? So we've got standards, and standards are actually not enforceable by law. They're standards, they're national standards. The standards are subservient to regulations, which is the specific sets of rules, as you've mentioned, Robert, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the EIR, and they're governed by the Act, the actual Occupational Health and Safety Act. So going from the top, we have our Act, then we have our regulations, and then we have our standards. So that's how we get guided by these installations and these rules.
I think Robert, you said that PV installations can be done by a competent person. So, and I know that we also saw that there's a lot of discussion going around. So, how do we define that competent person? So, and how do you see that? So how do you interpret that? So, with the Green China team.
Well, competency depends on a level of training that you must have in that particular discipline. In the electrical industries, there's a lot of different lines that one can follow in a lot of different disciplines. Thinking about control systems, electronics, instrumentation, and many others. And PV is one of those lines that comes out of the electrical industry. Being an electrician doesn't necessarily mean that you are competent in designing and installing PV systems. There's some dangers involved in that one needs to get trained in. There's some characteristics on the PV systems in the way that they react to irradiation, temperature variances, and so forth, that one definitely needs to understand before you can just simply go and install PV systems. And unfortunately, we have seen and witnessed some incidents where bad planning and bad design has caused some fires in some instances and some breakdowns in other instances. So I think training and competency goes together. And with that being said, there are some training bodies and accreditation bodies out there, of which SAPIA is one, that I think we should strengthen those guys' hands and try to get competent and trained people in the field.
Which brings us to the point, and I see there's one question. I will come to the question just now, but what role does training play in all that? So I mean, how does one become a subject matter expert? So, Lyndsay, what do you think in that?
Well, Antje, the only way you become a subject matter expert is to constantly read up on the subject, study the subject, and work on the subject. And that's probably the main manner. That's how we all start, is becoming an expert in the industry that you've chosen. That is one of the ways how training then helps. It doesn't, there's a lot of questions, a lot of statements about getting a PV green card, and that gives you the license to start with a PV installation. It can't be further from the truth. That is unfortunately a lot of the go-to opinion in the market. And let's take Green Academy. They employ subject matter experts, of which we are subject matter experts in our subjects. And we then assist in training people or students or anyone to do PV installations or do them correctly. I've been involved in the electrical industry for many years, and I went through Green Academy a number of years ago, and I learned a heck of a lot in PV installations and DC. DC is not the same as AC. We've trained a lot of electricians that come from very, very good institutions like ESCOM that are really, really well qualified and highly, subject matter experts in their own right. And we've noticed that even then they will learn a lot from us because we are subject matter experts in our subject. Would that answer your question?
Yes, and I think there's also something what fits to what you also said, so what we had in the pre-discussion, and I think we all agree that the role of electricians in the PV industry is quite important. So they are like an important part, and because at the end of the day they have to issue the COCs for the installation or add the installations into the COC. But if you come from a proper electrical background and had no experience in PV, and then you will start to make your own mistakes, which maybe will be very expensive. So, and Robert, you said that you have to be familiar with the problems and with what can go wrong. And so, is this what we can teach or what you can learn in the training?
Yes, definitely. In the training, and I mean, not only the green training, but especially we concentrate a lot on prior mistakes that other people made. Unfortunately, sometimes on prior mistakes that even us as trainers made. Why should we reinvent the wheel? We know why those mistakes were made. We know how to rectify them. We can train the participants in not making those same mistakes. And we can refer back to the regulations and the standards, and we can say, but why didn't we see this previously? We made the mistake because we didn't follow the standards properly. And that's all information that we can share in training with participants, and thereby give them the tools they need to be proper, trained, competent, and hopefully accredited people in the long run. And that would build the whole industry.
Yeah, cool. I have the first question from the audience here, and it is COC is one element. However, ECSA signs off ECSA signs off are still crucial for the SSEG application. The amount of small installation below 100 kilowatt or kVA not approved by council are huge. It's probably 60% of all installations in the size category. If the green courses are certifications, or if the green course or certifications can provide solar companies and their respective employees with a registration number to use as verification to sign off to council with SSEG, would be incredible.
Antje, yes, I think we must go back to, as we started this webinar, that only a registered person may sign off the installation. Let's start at the first part of that question, is ECSA sign-off. It's been a bit of a bone of contention, and when the participant says 60% are not approved, he's probably right if he's in Gauteng or in the Free State or KZN. The Western Cape has been very proactive on that side of things. I have my own opinions on that when it comes to larger PV installation. Give it any large installation, whether it's even not PV, an ECSA registered engineer is generally involved and normally involved. Why the smaller installations are still required to have an ECSA sign-off, ECSA engineer signing off is a bit beyond me, but I think it's because our industry is a bit immature still. Having said that, I know that City Power, from the last documents I saw, actually allow an IE or an MIE to sign off an installation up to 30 kVA now. So we in flux, the industry is in flux. Another thing that from my perspective is that the requirement for an ECSA engineer is not covered in actually the SAN standard. It's actually a requirement from NRS, from the Working Committee of NRS. And so it's a bit of a difficult point to discuss, because the councils, the metros and that have taken their lead from the NRS requirements.
Anything to add from your side, Robert? You are nodding.
No, I agree with Lyndsay. The sign off by the engineer is not something that's stated in the regulations. Mostly the bylaws, the municipalities or the client requires that. Lyndsay, is that also the way that you experience it?
Yeah, so as they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. If it's not covered in a standard or on NRS, but the municipality decides to add it to their bylaw, then you have to comply with that bylaw. And that's where certain municipalities, like say, City of Cape Town, have said that this is what's going to happen. So even though not required by standard or an act, the bylaw is then applicable.
Yeah, there's another question from the audience. So first of all, thank you, Lyndsay, for answering the question. And does the academy reach out to previous students and audit their work, hand over packs to clients, or so prevalent if a testing sheet becomes generic and authenticated by Green or Sapvia is another great option? That brings us, maybe I can add already so to what we've discussed in our preparation meeting, or when we decided as a group to come up with that webinar. So we can only offer training. So I think, Robert, we had a very nice discussion about that. So training does not make you an expert, but maybe you want to take that question.
Yes, we can offer the training, and we offer the best training that we possibly can based on our knowledge and industry knowledge that we've gained. But remember, the fact that somebody has gone through the Green Academy training, even the fact that he's gone through any electrical training and accreditation for that matter, doesn't necessarily make that person a competent installer. That person needs to go out in the field and actually make his training count. You can get somebody with good training that does terrible work. And the flip side is also true. One can also get people that have very little training, but they do excellent neat work. I've seen that as well. Us training the participants doesn't make good, competent installers out of them. Their personalities and their perspective on what they're doing, that's what joins in with the training. Also, as far as the documentation is concerned, what the participant is asked, we can offer some documents. I know we in the green training we do offer like the site surveillance form. Some handover documents are also in the package, but those are merely templates that the participants can use. I don't think we have the authority, nor do we seek the authority to issue legal documents for participants to use. We can only give guidelines.
Yeah, Robert, and I think that's also maybe going to answer the question, that same question that's asked, is how do we now do a test report for PV? Because there isn't really one. There's also differing opinions on that. The ECA has the stance that the test report, in capital letters, THE, is the only test report that's actually valid for installations. And what they want you to do, or suggest that you do, is that your evidence, all the photographs, all the additional pieces of paper, testing of the batteries, the PSCC, etc., is additional documents. Now, while I find that a credible opinion, the standards in a number of places also mention a test report. They don't actually say the test report. And my take on that is as long as the test report is in the format that is recommended in 10142, and we can add in all the necessary information in to cover this, because we're discussing PV now, this PV installation and all the requirements that have been suggested by various bodies, we have a well-documented test report, including our line diagram, photographs, etc. So, yeah, so the format is, we believe we've got one of the formats. It's not the only format. And that's, I think, our starting point and how this course has developed into giving these so-called generic testing sheets. There's no fixed way that these should be done. The ECA just, sorry, not the ECA, but the electrical regulations request that the COC must be as the recommended, the actual front page of the document.
Which brings us actually to the starting point, so because the post did not only share general information about COC, but actually also presented part of, or showed the COC, and that you have in the COC that one tick box to say DC installation correct, and then so that we developed a test report which actually could help you to document the complete commissioning. And maybe Lyndsay, you can tell us a little bit more why we decided to do that. And so, yeah.
Sure, look, we, as electricians, had a test report, a recommended test report, and we could add to it. When we started wanting to certify and do the tests and make sure that a PV installation is compliant, I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything that particularly was relevant to the South African conditions. There are many examples and reports and spreadsheets out there. The Australian market is very mature, and we had a look at the Australian market, and we took guidance not only from the Australian market, but from the USA as well, and compiled a test report, and then took information that came out of the document that is now being withdrawn, the 10142-1-2, which was supposed to be our new PV standard. And that document was withdrawn, but there was information in there for a suggested PV test report, which we then compiled and put together into one report. It's interesting, though, that we say that there's no test report or there's no guidance. It's interesting that in 2010, the Electrical Conformance Board actually identified a need for safety and control in the PV industry. Can you believe it? As far back as then already. And they said they need a test report. They need information that people can certify electrical installations. And that would normally be the work of the SABS to create a standard. The SABS committees have fallen apart. They're not functional. And they actually enlisted in the help of the CSIR, and the funding came from USAID. And that's how the 10142-1-2 actually started and came about. We know what happened. It was started with 70 pages. It ebbed and flowed and eventually ended up in a few, maybe 20, 30 pages. And 2 months later was withdrawn. And I think one of the reasons is that we became aware, well, I became aware that there's actually another SAN standard, 60364, which covers PV installations, but there's no test report in it.
And this is why, yeah, Robert?
Sorry, I don't know if there's another question on this, but maybe I should just start on
There
this.
is another question, but I would withhold that for a moment because it's another topic. So let's close this discussion.
Okay. I've got the ECB test report here, and I just want to highlight some notes on the ECB test report that actually allows us to add other documents and test reports to this test report. It says here on note 1, this report covers only the part of the installation described in section 3. So section 3 of the test reports then describes what your installation is. And then it's got interesting notes here. Note 7 says, in most circumstances, this test report should be accompanied by annexure pages for circuits, earth continuity, and ideally wiring diagrams, photos. Please query if not the case. And also section 3 says, include annexure pages for specific reflections as wiring diagrams, etc. Which means that we are supposed to, not only we may, we are supposed to add annexures as or onto our test report for the installation that we did. Now, I think what we did with Lyndsay's help on compiling that test report is exactly that. An organized manner that you can test your installation, quantify your installation, and then attach it to a proper test report with a COC number to comply with this regulation or this requirements.
Maybe it's time for a short commercial break before we come to the other questions. So we always speak about that course of ours by site. I mean, we mentioned it a few times. So what we developed, or actually our trainers, developed a one-day course on compliance of PV systems. And it's actually, I mean, we always discuss, or the trainers always discuss in between, they are all installers, and they developed a lot of own material. They faced a lot of problems. They, especially Lyndsay and Robert, they really like the compliance and all the regulations topics. So, and they had a look on all the documents and regulations, and this is what we discussed as a first part. So, which is actually the try part of the course. So we discuss, and we also help you to understand how to interpret the different regulations, and then we literally do the commissioning. So we complete. So we do all the commissioning, all the tests, and then we complete a test report together, so that all what you need to know, you can actually exercise in that one day. And there's also still room for discussion. And yeah, we still have some. So we have one more course in November in Johannesburg on the 26th of November. And actually the price is 3,950 rand, but our alumni gets the 10% discount. And we also have courses in February. And if you want to know more about the course, so you can either ask your question now, or you can discuss Sakani. You can call Sakani, sorry. That was the commercial break. Now we are back. And we have one question here. With regard to grounding, we don't use earth spikes to ground our PV module in my company. We only comment the PV modules with the Council of PE. Is that compliant?
Tulani, absolutely, it is compliant. So 10142 under chapter 612.2 says that an earth electrode might be required for purposes such as antennas, surge protection devices. It goes further to, in 6.12.3, talk about earthing of exposed conductive parts. And that could be metal enclosures on PVC conduit, etc. If we go down to 6.12.3.1G, it talks about class 1 equipment. Now, class 1 equipment is equipment that's not double insulated, like class 2. PV modules are class 2. They are classified as a class 2 product. So that will also lead you in the right direction. And then conductive parts that do not need to be earthed is a certain list of items, and normally out of arm's reach, not touching a conductive surface. Maybe I can close up with answering your question by saying that we don't earth PV modules, but we do bond them. We bond them together, and we bond them back to the main earthing terminal. So yes, your company is 100% right, and it is compliant. If there's an earth spike, maybe I can add that if there's an earth spike, that must be bonded back to the main earthing terminal with a 6 mm squared. So yes, your company is 100% correct.
Anything to add, Robert?
Yeah. So to conclude, earth spike is optional. I always say that the main function of the earth spike is if you expect direct lightning hits on the installation. So the earth spike is optional, but bonding your earthing system to your existing earthing system of your installation to the supplier's earth, that is compulsory. You're only allowed to have one earthing system, meaning that having an earth spike and having your PV system separately earthed from the rest of the installation is definitely not right. It must be bonded to the rest of the installation. Adding to the topic, unfortunately, again, some bylaws and some inspectors will require you to install an earth spike because that is their turf that you're playing on, and you should play it the way that they do. And they require that earth spike. But it's not in any national standard as such.
We have one more additional question in that regard. It's is a lightning risk assessment mandatory when doing PV installations?
It's a bit of a it's not mandatory, and yet it is. The 10140-1-2 that was withdrawn gave clear guidelines on the size of the PV installation, and depending on the size of the installation, whether there was no risk assessment required, or you had to do a risk assessment, or it was not negotiable type of thing. So we need to look at lightning protection from the risks involved. And that's normally how you would then say, do you need a lightning protection system or not?
One more question or comment. Aren't we required to then testing existing earthing before we bond to it?
Robert?
Just repeat that question, please, Antje.
The question is, so when we use an existing earthing system, so should we not test it before we bond to it?
We do test the existing system, definitely. Whenever we issue a COC, and of course, on this electrical installation, you will have to issue a COC afterwards. The registered person should do an earth loop test. And that earth loop test is in essence a test of the electrical earthing system. If it's connected to the star point of the transformer, and if you have adequate earth. So yeah, that system should be tested as part of the COC. It will be tested.
Good. I hope that answers your question. I have another question from the discussions before. So who is liable for a PV system? So maybe Robert, you want to start with that one.
Well, the liability always starts with a user. of the system. Any electrical installation work, the EIR regulations are very clear about that. The user of the electrical system is responsible for the safety of that system. Part of the responsibility that that user have is to have a competent person do a COC on the installation, and the regulation is also clear that all installations must have or shall have, to use the correct term, and COC, and the user will have access to that COC. Now, if there's let's say an incident and the user do have a COC, then the person who issued the COC then also becomes liable as far as negligence on his side could be proved. If the COC is issued, the registered person then also needs to answer for, of course, a certification of competence that he issued in that regard.
And would you, yeah, Lyndsay?
I can add to that. It says the user or the lessor. Now, the lessor, I might own a house in Cape Town. If I lease the house out to the person in Cape Town and something goes wrong in Cape Town and I'm in Gauteng, I will remain responsible for that installation because I'm the lessor. So the user could be the owner, or it could be the person staying in the installation, or it could be the lessor. And this is why many rental contracts are recommended that the rental contract includes that the tenant, the person is actually going to be in the installation, and not the lessor is to be responsible for the installation. And that's something that a lot of the top agents, the estate agents have it in their rental contracts, but it's something we should be aware of as well.
I see that there are more questions, but I would like to add one more on that one. So, I mean, it's on a, so you say you just reflected the view of the owner of the house, but you as electricians, so would you feel prepared enough when it goes back? I mean, when the owner of the house comes back to you because you issued the COC, when you would hand over a COC with only one tick box. I mean, so would that, so I think there's a reason that you developed a test report which you can attach to the COC. So why did you come up with that instead of just saying, I know what I did, I know my work is compliant, and I tick that box?
Yeah, Robert, I think you started my journey in this, and a lot of guidance came from you regarding how comprehensive a test report should be.
Yes, thanks, Lyndsay. Yes, that section 3 of the certificate of compliance, I always spent the most time on. Remember, that's the part of the certificate that quantifies the installation, or the part of the installation that you did and that you are responsible for, and that you can be held liable for if something goes wrong. And it's important to give as much detail as possible on that section. And you can't give detail in one tick box that said, yes, I installed a 15 kVA PV system, and tick there that I think it's safe. I don't think that's enough information. Definitely, the more you can elaborate on your installation, the better. That's why I think a proper test report or form of some sort that you can attach as an annexure is definitely relevant. And also the COC asks for that. So yeah, don't be afraid to put too much information on. I think all information, or there's no such thing as too much information on section 3. The description of the installation covered by the report.
One question which ties in very nicely is Do you also train people on instruments required to do testing on PV system? What type of instruments are required?
Yeah.
Lyndsay, do you want to take that?
Yeah.
I'll let
Or
Robert
Robert.
start with that. He's got a bit of experience with the stuff that's actually at the academy.
Yes, we definitely train with the testers in a couple of our training courses. But then, especially in our compliance course, we do all the compliance testing with the participants. The physical testing, we show them the testers. We have our normal multimeter that can test DC voltages, AC voltages, earth continuity, the DC and AC clamp meter that also allows us to test short circuit currents. Because short circuit current you can't test in line with a normal multimeter. Also, typical the Seward and Sonel testers that we have for PV testing. Particular for PV testing, we showcase those and also how they work, as well as how to do some testing if you don't have the specific tests, like your insulation resistance tests and all that. In short, we showcase all the tests required by SANS Section 8 for a PV installations, and also the tests required by SANS 60364 for compliance. We show all of those tests, how it's done to the participants of this course.
Yeah, good. Anything to add? So you just mentioned, so a lot of you are alumni, and you know that we work together with technology partners to equip our sensors. And luckily, we also got approached from Sonel, who provide us with the test equipment and also trained the team how to use it. And it's very nice equipment. I have another question here from Chris Bailey. Hi, Chris. Sorry, okay. Appropriate fire suppression for lithium systems is the next hurdle. Not covered in the SANS. Thoughts on how this will be handled and backtracked?
Chris, good question. No, it's not covered. We must take our guidance from the building regulations, and SANS 10400 Part T is about fire protection. As it stands, in edition 5 that was issued this year, there's the word battery is not mentioned anywhere, and the word lithium or anything like that is not mentioned at all in the fire regulations. So fire regulations do not cover fire suppression for lithium battery systems. Your question, is it not covered? Yes, I don't see it being covered. It's certainly not covered in 10142 or in 60364. Will it be handled? How will it be handled and backtracked? My opinion is that our lithium systems lithium batteries that we have currently in circulation, the ones that are the most prevalent, are one of the safest technologies out there. And it's not to say they won't burn, but it's generally the bad connections and the bad design overloading the batteries is going to cause your fires. Fire consultants that have consulted to me, that I've consulted with, don't require fire suppression as a rule. Some of them would. It'll be their own decision. Will it be backtracked? Well, if we look at 10142 and the COC, the electrical regulations and 10142 always say that what was compliant prior to the publish of this regulation will still stay compliant. So it's unlikely that the so-called backtracking of a regulation like that will come through. I doubt it. But again, anything's possible.
I have two more questions, thanks, Lyndsay, on COCs, and I start with the shorter one, and then I will try to summarize the longer one. The shorter one is, if you do a COC for a PV system, do you need to do a COC for the rest of the house as well?
The technically correct answer is the system, the house, the premises must be compliant before you touch it. There has to be an existing COC on the premises. You would issue then a supplementary COC on the part of the premises that you've now worked on. That is a big bone of contention. The regulations are quite clear. Robert mentioned that. So yeah, you should actually not touch an installation if it's not compliant, and if it's not compliant, you should then tell the customer or the client that this installation needs to be tested. Anything that is non-compliant needs to be fixed, and he needs to pay for it. That's the reality.
Yeah, I agree. The thing about regulations is regulation always assumes that everybody is following the regulations, which means that everybody will have a COC for the installation that they use. So that's the takeoff point of the regulation. And if you really want to do it to the letter, we're not supposed to do any installation work, electrical installation work, not only PV, on installations that hasn't got a COC. Of course, practically speaking, that's a very difficult line to get by, because there are so many installations out there without COCs. I think what we should do in the industry is to motivate everybody to make the investment, get their COCs, get the installations up to standard. And thereby we can follow up with other installations in the correct manner.
Which is actually also answering already the question of Norman, who came up with an example where they had to install a PV system in a house where the existing installation were not compliant, and the owner asked them to make a parallel circuit and getting a COC for that one. And he also asked so what to do. And I think you answered it.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, Antje. Norman, because remember, you are providing a service to a client that wanted a PV system. If you refuse to provide that service, he's going to go to your opposition, and your opposition's not going to refuse those that income. It's going to do the installation. So what do we do? We should motivate the client to get the COC for the premises. That's first price that we definitely should do. If the client then refuses, or maybe hasn't got the capital to do it at that stage, you should at least certify your part of the installation as being compliant and safe. You can do that, or I think you should do that, by issuing a certificate of compliance for your part of the installation that you added, noting that your certificate of compliance will not be a valid certificate until he gets a certificate of compliance for the installation. You cannot issue a COC on a branch of the tree if the tree itself doesn't have a COC, or a part of the installation if the takeoff point or the point of supply doesn't have a COC. So in that way, you will certify that your part of the installation is compliant. But as far as COC validity is concerned, your COC won't be valid in an insurance claim case, for that matter, until the client has a proper COC for the whole building or the whole installation prior to yours.
Thanks. I have one more question from another direction, and before we are coming to an end. It does not feel like we are already 50 minutes in this discussion. And thanks for all the questions we got so far. So Julius is asking, in a telecom building, the 48-volt battery positive terminals are bonded to earth bar. Then the building common bar. On normal generators, the battery is also earthed. Why is the PV installation battery terminal not earthed?
Robert, I might take some guidance from you, but just to answer part of the question, no, I can't see that the lithium battery is a class 2 product purely because it's an exposed conductive part, the casing of the battery. On the PV side, up to the inverter, we use a floating earth in South Africa so that we don't earth either the positive or the negative. So that is not earthed. Now, in a inverter which is without simple separation, typically are high frequency inverters, that could be challenging. It's, however, something that I cannot answer you directly on the battery. Yes, I'm aware of the telecom systems and the telecommunication systems that earth the DC side. Regarding the earthing of the batteries, that is a question that Robert might answer, or we might have to go and dig a little bit on that. Antje, if you wouldn't mind, I see there's another question about PCC, but maybe Robert should first answer the question on the batteries.
Yes, I can only, the little bit of information that I have now is, yes, on the PV side, definitely. Because we're using transformerless inverters, neither the positive or negative are earthed. But I think the question is more on the battery side. And also, yes, on the PV side, where we connect to an inverter, we don't earth the negative. I think I should research that. I've got some ideas why it might be, but I'd rather not get quoted on ideas. So give us a chance to maybe get back to the group on that.
I can just add on that, on the Victron systems, if you battle to get a generator to latch to the system properly, some of the Victron guys, specialists, have recommended that the negative of the battery actually gets earthed. But I think we're looking at a specialist application there. And again, something I can't comment directly to answer that question of yours.
Okay. I actually wanted us also to talk a little bit more about not only the regulations, but also that interpretation of the regulations. Because when we had our pre-discussion, so we said, I mean, and you hear the list of the regulations, most of them were not published yesterday. So they are in place for years. And it's, as I said, so it's not only that you know it, but it's also a big part that you have to interpret it. And our team did that. And so therefore it makes sense, instead of reading through all the documents yourself, so you could come to the compliance course and benefit from the discussions and the interpretations already made. So we had that poll at the beginning and at the end. So how compliant your systems are. And I see the results from the beginning, where we had like more than 40, 20, 50, 70% say out of 10, more than 7. So do we have a similar result now with the end poll? Sakani?
Yes, Antje. I'm seeing now the trend. People are still filling in their answers, but there's just a little bit of similarity with the results.
Which is very good. So
yes, which is very
I hope
good.
that you still could benefit from the webinar, and we would appreciate to get your comments. Also, the whole webinar was streamed live on Facebook, so it would also be nice to get your comments there.
One other thing, Antje, sorry. I see that everybody has said that they would actually attend the course on the compliance of PV systems. So we're hoping to see most of them in the next courses then, because they all said they
Sakani would
would
definitely
actually
approach
attend.
you. We have your contact details, and you also can contact her when you have a bigger group to send, so to get your special deal to come to the course, or your special price.
Ancha, I see
Thank you.
there's a
Thank you,
question
Tsakani.
from
Lyndsay?
Ancha, I see there's a question from Paul, and that question, I don't know if he asked it in the Facebook posts, but I see that's the same question in the post. Maybe we can quickly answer that. PSCC of battery banks. Yeah, difficult one, Paul, but it's actually not that difficult. In 8.4.6, it says that DC circuits, under DC circuits, that it says that PSCC shall be done for all sources and must be taken into account. Right, how do you test it? Well, your answer is actually correct. You can get the supply information. I did a bit of a few calculations. I took the cell internal resistances, resistance of the cables, and I took information from the suppliers, and I then contacted companies like Solar MD, Freedom One, and some of the others, Revolve, and I got their PSCC ratings from them, as you rightly said there, from the suppliers. And then we did a calculation and worked it back the manual way, and there wasn't a lot of similarities. So, yeah, I would say, because the standard asks us to list the PSCC, probably the most accurate way is to get the information from the supplier. Correct.
Thanks for adding that. I was so concerned to end sharp at 5. I saw one more question, when the course would be available in PE. So if you have more people from PE here in the group, so I mean, please contact Tsakani. So Port Elizabeth is a limited market, let's say. So you will see that we offer less trainings there, and the special courses to bring them there also always need a critical mass of participants. So, and if you have people from the Eastern Cape in the webinar, just let us know, contact us, and as soon as we have like a little group together, so we can schedule the course also in PE. Thank you. And thank you, Lyndsay, and thank you, Robert.
Pleasure.
So I think that was
Thanks, Robert.
very interesting. And give us your feedback. Let us know what you want. What is the topic you want us to discuss next? And hope to see you soon in the courses. And not to forget to thank you, Tsakani, to facilitate the whole event.
Thanks, Ancha.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.